Hi, this is Laura and welcome to my channel. This video serves as an introduction to the program Marvelous Designer. I am currently running version 7.5. I know I've watched some older version videos and it's helped me figure out this one, so hopefully it helps you no matter what version you're running. Please keep in mind I am learning this program as I go, as much as you are. So if I say anything incorrect or you have any tips for me, please leave a comment down below. When you open the program, this is how it appears. I haven't loaded anything, so your view should look just like this. This window right here on the left serves as our 3D plane. We will load a 3D model, a human form, in this window. This program calls those models avatars. This window on the right is our 2D view, where we will plot points to create the clothes, then simulated and draped onto our avatar. If you're familiar with costume construction or clothing making and all, this is basically where we're plotting points to make a flat pattern, just the way you would to then cut out a fabric. If you're familiar with Illustrator at all, this is very similar to creating vectors in their program. So the first thing we need to do is load an avatar into the system. And you do that by clicking the File menu, Add, Avatar. These are the pre-loaded avatars that come with the program. We have a few choices here, but I'm going to do a female avatar. Now you can see that we have a 3D model on the left and we have a 2D model on the right. I'd like to go through some basic navigation here with you. So to move your model in the 3D plane, if you hold the Option key and click the left button, the normal mouse click button, you can move the avatar on one plane like so. That's also how you move it around in the 2D plane, by clicking Option and using your left click and hold and drag. In both planes, we can use our scroll bar to zoom in and out, like so. Now you can't do this in the 2D plane, but since this is 3D, we can move it on the X and Y axis. And you do that with a right click and hold. You can move it in either direction and all around. But try to keep it in the front so that you don't get confused just yet. This magical rainbow orb in the middle is what they call a gizmo. I've heard people call it a gizmo, and I wasn't sure what it was actually called. It is actually called a gizmo. You can change what gizmo you're looking at by clicking Preferences, Gizmo, and then you have a few different choices here. The one I'm more familiar with is the World Coordinate gizmo. It just gives you a couple more options here. And what this does is it can help you move the clothes that you're putting on it in a straight line. As you can see, you can move in all directions and it can get pretty confusing pretty quickly. So this gizmo helps you stay straight, which, just like costumes and clothing, it's a huge benefit. So now that we've loaded our 3D avatar, we have a few view options available to us. This head icon right here can change what we're looking at. We can toggle between textured surface, monochrome surface, which is what I'm looking at right now, and mesh. Textured surface is our realistic view. Our mesh gives us a mesh of this character. But I'm going to stick with the monochrome because it loads really nicely. So now I'm going to walk you through how to plot points and make a basic garment in this program. I will be going over how to make a sleeveless dress because the simplicity of it should help us figure out the fundamentals of this program before we move forward into more complicated garments. So we are going to be focused on this view, the 2D plane. To start making a pattern, we go to the 2D pattern menu, the Create menu, and then Polygon. There is a shortcut for that, and the shortcuts, you can look at them up here. I like to click things while I'm getting started, but I imagine that's much faster as you start to get into it. So I'm going to zoom in and we're going to start plotting points around the body. I'm not going to put them directly on the body. Just like making clothing, you want some room to breathe. We want to be able to move that around the side of the costume. So I'm going to start by plotting half of the dress, and then we can copy it over to the other side to create a full front piece. I'm going to make sure I'm in far enough on the shoulder as to not be over the cap of the arm. This program will kind of warp it here, but the reason I'm using this program is to see if we can print these patterns and make real clothes out of it. So I don't want any morphing right here. I would like it to be as accurate as possible. So I'm going to click with my left click, and then I'm going to bring it up to the neck. And I'm going to make this a V-neck, and it snaps to this center line to help me. So I'll pick a spot where it's going to go, maybe here. Now, going straight down here isn't too hard, but if you hold the Shift button, you get these guides. Again, it's similar to the guides in Illustrator. It snaps to the guides while you're holding Shift. And unlike Illustrator, you cannot click when it's not on the guide while holding the Shift button. So I'm going to go down and plot the bottom. Okay, and here, the grid helps me go straight as well, but this tool with the Shift icon is nice. The Shift button, rather. So now I'm going to come up higher, but I don't want to use too many points because I'm trying to keep this simple right now, so it's going to be hard for me to keep this simple, but let's see. Okay, I think I can go straight up from there, and then I will click the point that I started at to close it off. And then, woo, it'll do its thing, and then it appears over here on the 3D model. So while you're plotting, let's say that you don't like what's happening. Let's pretend I'm plotting my first piece, and I don't like how this is going, so I'm going to hit Escape, and that will cancel out what I've done. Because it's yellow, I know that it's selected. I can also delete just by hitting the Delete button, and that deletes everything. But because I do want that, I'm going to do Undo, and you can do it through the file menus up top as you normally would, but you can also do Option or Command Z. So now that we've plotted the front half, we want to copy it over so that we get a complete front of the garment. We will then do that to get the back of the garment as well. Now, because this garment is so simple, we probably could just plot the whole piece without copying it over, but as garments start to get more complicated, keeping this symmetry is really important. The easiest way to do that would be to just copy it and flip it over. So there's two ways, to my understanding, that we can make this happen. We can do it within the 2D pattern window, but we can also do it within the 3D pattern window, and they're a little bit different. So I am still on the polygon tool, and it wants me to keep plotting. So what I am going to do is move over to this transform pattern tool. And just to zoom in, it looks like this. By clicking that, I basically have my cursor back again. And I am going to click in my 2D view on the half of my dress that I want to copy. By right-clicking it and selecting Symmetric Pattern, don't do the one with sewing yet, because we're doing everything manually to learn. You click Symmetric Pattern, it automatically flips it over for you. And I have not clicked anything yet. It's automatically floating on my mouse. It's waiting for me to click and tell it where to go. So again, from my understanding, I don't think you're supposed to put it directly on the other piece. You're supposed to leave a gap here. And from what I can infer is because when you're sewing, you need to click which line goes to which line. So if it was really close, it would be really hard to know what you're clicking, and as things get more complicated, that could really trip you up. So if you just leave a gap, it will be great. And it makes it a little off-center, but that's fine. So just by clicking my left button, it will place it there. It will now render it in the software, and you can now see it on my 3D model. So I am going to do undo and show you how to do it in the other window. Now bear with me, I'm less familiar with it this way. So let's say I'm not clicked on it. I can select it just by clicking it, and the gizmo pops up, but don't worry, we're not using the gizmo yet. When you right-click it here, you don't have the same symmetric pattern option. So what you can do is just use standard copy and paste. So by doing Command C and Command V, now note that the white around the window shows I'm selected here. Now you can see that it's here. And I've just pasted the same item. I am going to click and place it right here. I can move it again later. So now it's not the right way, it's not the right orientation. So now I can click it and select Flip Horizontally. By left-clicking it again and dragging, I can drag it over. But as you can see, it wants to move around. But the difference here is that it doesn't actually orient the pattern the way that I need it to. So I don't actually understand why that happens yet. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to go back here and click Symmetric Pattern again and place it where I need it to go. That seems a little more controlled to me. As a costumer, I do like working in this flat window, and I do think I'm going to gravitate more towards this overall in this software. So our next step is to sew these two pieces together down the center front. And I want to select the segment sewing tool. That's this tool right here. It's the sewing machine that has the two plotted points next to it. And again, these all have shortcuts. The program likes to tell you what they are, but at the moment I'm focusing on what the icons look like. So I'm hovering inside the pattern, but it's automatically selecting whatever side I am closest to. I want to connect this piece to this piece, so I'm going to click inside the left piece close to this line, and then I'm going to click inside the right piece on the other side. Now if you look in the 3D view, it has rendered it and there are straight lines in between. You always want to look and see how those straight lines appear because it tells you if you have connected the right pieces together. If you haven't, they might do a weird cross, and you can see it from all angles. It's also turned red over here. So now I would like to introduce you to the Simulate button. Do keep in mind this is going to fall off of our avatar because it has no shoulders and there's no back to it. But when I tried this following another video, I then got stuck and couldn't reset the simulation. So I feel like it's valuable to show you and show you how to reset it. So if it was complete, it would sew it together, and that's what we will do later, but again, it's going to fall right off the model. This arrow button is the Simulate button, and I'm going to click it now. Ready? Go. And it sewed it, and it falls right off of her body very slow and dramatically and crumbles on the ground. I find that a little bit satisfying. So now we need to find the Reset 3D Arrangement icon. And this is the entire reason I'm zooming on these icons in this video, because this little guy was kind of hard to see. This is the Reset Simulation icon. Reset 3 Arrangement icon, I'm sorry. So I'm going to click that. And it's going to take it back to normal. It seems so easy, but that really took me like 20 minutes. So now that this is sewn and that we've simulated it, we know that we did it correctly, at least in the front. I am going to move the piece that's off center back to meet the other one. It's not going to undo my sewing, and I can just click it in the 2D move and hold and move it to meet the left piece. You can see that it wants to snap to that point, and if I try to move up and down, it's holding it where it needs to go. So, thank you, friend. I am going to put it there. And then by releasing, it puts it there. It hasn't undone my sewing, and as you can see in this view, it's kept it separate, and I can still see the lines down the center of the garment. So now I am going to copy both of my front pieces to make a back piece. I'm going to click off of this just so we can see the whole process. Just like in other programs like Illustrator, if I hold Shift and click, it will select multiple things. So I'm going to click this just by itself with my left click, and then by pressing Shift, holding it, and click, it will select both of them. Now, I trust doing the copy and paste in this view because I've done it before. I still am not entirely certain what happens in that view. So I'm going to copy and paste using the shortcuts Command-C and Command-V. And then, again, it pastes it and I am holding it before clicking at all. I'm going to place this directly to the side. And as you can see in the 3D view, it's now next to my other garment. The next thing we're going to do is to move it behind the avatar, but when we move it in the 3D view, it's going to stay here in the 2D view. So I talked about the gizmo earlier, and that's how we're going to move it back in a controlled fashion within the 3D menu. As I showed you, it's pretty easy to move around on many planes here, and we want to make sure that it goes pretty much directly behind it. The first time I did it, I didn't have the right gizmo up, and I just did it manually, and it seemed to work just fine. But again, as things become more complicated, I think precision is extremely important. Also, because I am still learning this program, I am not sure why the gizmo appears and then doesn't when I select both within the 3D view. But when I select both in the 2D view, the gizmo does appear. I will work that out as I get forward in the program. I'm just not sure for the moment, and I want to move forward. I'm sure you do too. So what I want to do now is rotate my avatar so I can see where I'm going. Again, that's a right click and a drag, and I'm going to keep it kind of, I like looking at the gizmo so that I can see all the locations here. I'm also going to just option click and move myself so that I can see a little bit better. So by dragging on one axis of the gizmo, it takes it in a very straight line for me. I am going to take it to here. I can see by her hand I'm not behind her, so I'm going to take it here. I'm going to rotate more. And again, I'm going to click this blue arrow and move it back so that I'm kind of clearing her back. I didn't tell the program how far away to put it from her chest, so I think it's going to just assume that when I sew it together, it sucks it right onto her body. So I am also going to rotate here. I am going to move over, and I'm going to use the red axis to drag it closer to the back. I can see that the avatar has a little bit of cheek peek happening, so I'm going to use this a little bit and move it out. Can't tell you what happens if you have her body cutting through it, but that's probably not what you want. Okay, so it looks like I am behind and in a pretty good spot. So although my garment is very symmetrical, the next step in the process is to flip the back piece to be in the right orientation. Because we copied the front and moved it over, and then we just moved it backwards and over, the front is still the front here, and we want this to go the opposite direction. So let's say I'm not selected on it anymore. I like to start from square one. I will have to select both sides. Let's see if I can do it in this view first. I'm going to click my left back piece and click my right back piece. I am going to right click and select flip horizontally. And that did it. It's a little hard to tell, but I trust. So the way I was able to move this back piece, the program automatically selected it for me. This is the Select Move tool. It's very much like any other Select Move tool, but if your program was not automatically selecting this for you, you probably couldn't move anything around. You need to click that in order to have your cursor that helps you navigate. My next task is to sew the front half of the garment to the back half of the garment. And it's almost the same as what we did in the front to connect the left front to the right front. This is where it gets a little more complicated, and we want to watch out for crossing lines when we do it. So once again, we're going to go back to the 2D window. I am going to click this segment sewing icon once again, and I'm going to zoom in and move a little bit so I can see better. So I am going to connect my shoulders together. Because I flipped this backwards, I want to think about that when I'm connecting them together. Let's see if it works. It might not. I am going to select this shoulder and bring it over to meet this one. It looks like it's crossing already. There. Depending on where I am moving on this line, it will cross it. And I think what the program is having me do is click it where I clicked it before. If you look on this side, this little notch is towards the shoulder, and if I go towards the inner shoulder here, it crosses over my stitch line. So I'm going to make sure it's straight and click on that piece. It's going to render, and it looks straight. Great! That means I picked the right shoulder. Woohoo! So now I'm going to click the right shoulder, and I am going to move it over to meet this one. Again, I want to click it in the same location on this one, at least close enough. It really helps me when I do it. I'm going to click it there, and it's going to render it, and there we go. So the dress I have right now does not have a place for the arm to go. The first time I did this in Marvelous Designer, it stitched it up the side and the avatar's arm was still able to go through. But before we continue, I want to add a point so that the arm can go through. Because I've already copied the back and I'm already pretty far into my project, this may be a little more tricky at this point, but I'm going to try it anyway. I'm going to click Add Point, Split Line. It looks like 2 points with a plus sign in the middle. Now I'm going to be very careful because I want to make sure these points are all at the same spot. I'm going to go a little higher in the back. And it looks like the program copied it over to the other side for me. Thank you so much, Marvelous Designer. From here, I'm going to continue on with what I was doing. I am going to stitch the side panel to the side panel. I'm going to continue down and stitch the hip to the hip, and the skirt to the skirt. By zooming out a little, I'm going to do the same to this side. Once again, I want to make sure my lines don't cross. Now that my garment is stitched together, and you can see that it's still stitched together with all of these lines, I'm going to simulate. So by clicking this arrow, I will run and it will stitch everything together. Now notice that the arms of the dress are falling off of the model, and it is not imitating the shape that I did here. If I click the select icon again, I am able to drag portions of the clothes on the 3D model. And I have mixed results with this. Sometimes it moves it and it stays, sometimes it doesn't. See, that changed it a bit, but I'm not seeing any changes in my other view. So I'm going to click undo, and it will take me back and reset my simulation without clicking this reset 3D arrangement icon. I am speculating here, and I think that the problem I'm having is that the front is too low and the arms are slipping down over the shoulder. So in my 2D plane, I'm going to click this Edit Pattern icon. Because this is stitched together, it should move. Okay. It should move both pieces at the same time. So I'm going to make sure I'm not clicking on a particular piece like I just did. I'm going to click the Edit icon, and then I'm going to drag this point up. I am also going to drag it up in the back. And now I'm going to click Simulate again. That looks a lot better. The sleeve is now going straight up and down here. Although the neckline is a little more curved than I have plotted here, this part is the same. And that is how you do a basic dress in Marvelous Designer, and it introduces you to all of the fundamental tools. In our next video, we'll be going over a t-shirt, which will basically be the same construction here, but it'll start adding sleeves onto the body. Thanks so much for watching, and good luck!